What's up, everybody? I'm Dre, and in this video, we're going to be building from scratch a very simple automated trader on NinjaTrader 8. If you want the full code for this or any of my other indicators, you can find them on my Discord, and I'll link it in the description down below. Before we get started, this is just going to be a very simple reversal pattern strategy. It's not meant to be profitable. Please don't go full ape and enter this with real money. This is just meant as an example. I don't want to hear, hey Dre, I lost all my money with your strategy. What the? Don't do it. I am not responsible for what you do. I'm not a professional developer or a vendor. I just make these for fun. My hope for this video is that it may help those with low to no coding experience. So feel free to take this, make it your own, add your own formulas, modify what you need. But with that being said, let's get into it. All right, guys, for this strategy, we're going to be using a reversal pattern. The first thing I like to do is define what the reversal pattern is. So I've made this indicator to go along with it. This is going to be uploaded with this video. It's going to be on the Discord. But for the sake of simplicity, the way I've defined these, for a bullish pattern, the candle has to go below the previous candle, and it has to close above the previous candle. And we are going to enter when it breaks above your bullish pattern, and we're going to set a stop at the bottom of this candle. And for your bearish pattern, it's going to be the complete opposite. So the high of the candle has to be above the high of the previous, and the close of your bearish pattern has to be below the close of your previous candle. And we're going to set our entry right at the break of this candle and set our stop at the high of this candle. And the chart style I'm using for this is the Ninjascript. You can use anything you want as long as it fits the criteria of the reversal pattern. It's still going to enter, it's still going to stop. I just find it easier to show with this type of chart. Okay, so now we have to open up Ninjascript editor. So you go to new, Ninjascript, and you come out with this page. So let's start our strategy. So you go to this plus symbol at the bottom, left click, and new strategy. And then you come up with the wizard. Let's click next and type in the name. So let's call it reversal strat. So your first option is going to be your calculate method. You have three different options: on bar close, on each tick, and on price change. And on this page, it's for your on bar update, and this is how often your calculations are made. So on bar close means the calculations that you want for your script are only updated once every bar closes. With on bar close, it's not very CPU intensive, but you're always going to be lagging by 1 bar because you always need to wait till that bar closes in order for the on bar update to make any calculation. So for a breakout strategy like we're using, it's not going to work very well. Your next option is on each tick, and this will update every single tick. This one is very CPU intensive. This one is good if your strategy relies on something where the price won't necessarily change. Let's say like volume. Then on each tick might be right for you. But for this example we're doing today, we're actually going to be using on price change. And what on price change is just like the name says, anytime the price changes, the on bar update is going to make a calculation. It's still going to give us real-time results so we can utilize that for a breakout, but it's not going to be as CPU intensive as on each tick. So let's select that, click next. Here, we're not really utilizing this in this strategy. Okay, on this page, these are your additional event methods. So whenever you make a strategy, it automatically comes with on bar update. what I like to use with this as well is on position update. This will make a calculation whenever your position updates. And I'll explain why I need that later on while we're going through the code. But for now, let's move on. And then the next one that I like to use, this is where I'm going to be fitting the break even and the trail stop. I like using on market data. This can be CPU intensive. It relies on the market data, so your bid, ask, and the last price. I like to make sure when the last price is printed, that's when it's going to set my break even or my trail stop. That's the data I want to rely on. So I like using that one. But that's all we need for these. And we're going to hit next. Okay, next is your input parameters. Here is where we're going to add all of our customizable features. So any parameters the user can customize within the strategy. So for example, you have your offsets, your entry level, your stop level, any targets, the time frame you want to trade in, the amount of trades you want to take, things like that. This is where you can input them, and then the system will automatically add it to the code. So for example, price offset, we're going to do a double, and we're going to set the default at 1 cent and no minimum. And we hit OK, and it will add it here. Next is going to be percentage offset, double. Let's leave that at 0 and no minimum. And then tick offset is going to be an integer. Let's leave that at 1 and no minimum. So these are going to be your offsets for the reversal pattern. I'm going to be adding all the parameters we need. To not make this video too long, I'm going to stop the video here and I'll come back in a second and we'll see the full list. You have your offsets for your reversal pattern, your entry, your stop, even your trail stop. We could offset where that stop is going to be set. A daily profit limit, daily profit loss, how many trades you can take, the time frame you're able to take in, position size, and some more user customization. Make sure you pause the video if you need to, but we're moving on. The next is the plots and lines. We're not really going to be using that in this one, so we'll just hit next and we can finish. Okay, once you hit finish, this is what you come up with. The first thing I like to do from here, I'm a little bit OCD. I like to make sure all of this is nice and tidy. I like to make sure it's all spread out, nice and even, easy on the eyes. So again, I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to fix it up and I'll see you in a sec. And we're back. So you don't have to do this. I just like doing it so I can reference it and find it a little bit easier. So now we're going to scroll down and I'm just going to shift this down here. This is just where I like it. Again, all about the visual for me. So the next thing I like to do before I get started on anything else is I want to make sure my Ninjascript output is always clear whenever I load up a strategy. This is where all your calculations are going to show up here when you make prints. And this is going to be very important for diagnosing problems, making sure you have the right formulas, any sort of bug, any errors. You always use prints to try and solve that issue. Prints are going to be your best friend whenever there's something you can't figure out. And this is where you will find all that information. And to get to the Ninjascript output, again, go to your control center, new Ninjascript output, and this will show up. So in order to make sure that's always clear, I like to come up here and we just type in clear output window. And once we enable the strategy, that's going to make sure this output is all clear. Okay, so the next step here is to go to the on bar update. And I'm going to start with all my offsets. That's for the actual pattern, for your entry, your stop, and the trail stop. So we're going to do a percentage offset. We're going to do a price offset. And we're also going to be doing a tick offset. And this is just to give the user more customization for how they want to define the reversal candle. And now we're going to set another variable where it takes the highest of these three calculations, and that's the offset it's going to use for that reversal pattern. And for these, I like to do the private variables. So I like to come up here and we can just type them out like this. And one last thing, actually, before we move on, let's make some prints so we can make sure we have the right formulas for everything. I'm going to do one for each one of these. And all this is it prints the percentage calc. That's going to print it to the Ninjascript output whenever it makes that calculation. And I just do one for each one. And we're also going to use a Boolean here. And this is so you can turn it on and off while in the strategy. It'll make it a little bit easier if you don't want to see all the calculations. If system print, and we can just move all of that in there. Oh, make sure that's a capital. And the last thing I want to do here before we move on to the next offset, I like using regions. This just keeps it, again, a little bit neater for me. If I need to find a piece of code, I can just click on it later and I can find it a lot easier. You don't have to do this part. It's just a visual thing for me. And redo end region. Then you can just hide it away and move on to the next one. Okay, moving on. Now we have our entry offset, and this is going to be how much farther away from the high or the low you want to enter. So whether you want to enter right at the high of the previous candle, or you want to wait like 3, 4, 5 ticks later, you can fully customize that. So the first thing we want to do is define where our entry areas are. Our entry area for the longs is the high of the previous candle, and entry area of the short is the low of the previous candle. Next, we're going to do the same offsets we just did with the reversal offset. So we'll type this in here. So you have your same offsets, the percentage being the range of the candle, so the high minus the low, and you multiply that by the percentage offset entry, and this is the variable the user is going to be able to customize. Then your price is just the price offset, and the tick, again, just the tick offset. And with this one, you're going to pick the highest of the three numbers. Next, we're going to add these together. So your entry area plus your offset, or for short, your entry area minus the offset. So now that we have that, I'm going to do some prints as well. So I'm just going to copy, paste this. And because the names are pretty similar, we just added a entry to this. We can just highlight this, Control F, quick replace, and we'll say calc. Make sure this is highlighted. Replace with calc entry. Look for in selection and match. And we can just hit replace all. And it should update everything we need there. Oh, except for the offset. Fix that real quick. And that should be good for that. And I'm going to add a region here as well. Now, just like we did before with these, we're going to make a private variable. So we scroll up here and we're just going to type them out. And just for a visual again, I'm going to make some regions. Now that that's done, let's move on to the stop offset. And it's going to be very similar to the entry. So for our stop offset, we're going to copy all of this, paste it down here. We're going to highlight this, Control F. Now everything that says entry, we're going to replace it with stop. And make sure you're looking in selection match case, replace all. And now we need one actually for the lowercase and one for the enter. And now this is just going to be switched around. So our stop area for the longs is going to be the low of the reversal pattern candle, where our stop area for the short is going to be the high. So the complete opposite from this one. And we have to come down here too. So now our stop is going to be the stop area long, which is the low of the candle. And now we have to switch this to minus the offset. And for the stop is the high of the candle plus the offset. And I believe that is all good for the stop. Now from here, we're going to hit the compile button. And we get these errors because we have to set the private variables. So we'll copy, paste these. We highlight it, Control F, entry, and we're going to replace it with stop. Same with the capital. We're going to replace it with a capital and enter with stop. And now it should compile. What are we getting here? Percentage offset does not exist. Just go there, percentage offset. Okay, so let's go to the properties. Let's see if we can figure this out. And yeah, I forgot to capitalize. And make sure we capitalize these. And now it should compile. Okay, from here, I'm going to show you how these prints work. So we're going to pull up the chart. We're going to load our strategy. Reversal strat. So these are all the parameters. We're going to fix them up, make it look a lot neater. But for now, I just want to hit apply. We enable the strategy and nothing's going to happen yet. So we hit the enable button and we bring out our Ninjascript output. And these are going to be all the calculations. So your candle bar offset, your percentage, your tick calculation, everything is going to show up here. But if we scroll up, obviously it's a lot of calculation. You don't need this much. This is going to be very CPU intensive. It's going to slow down. So I'm going to show you how we can only calculate on the first tick of each bar while on price change, and this will make it so it's not as CPU intensive. So let's get back to the code. Okay, so from here, I'm going to make another condition is first tick of bar, and I'm going to make a boolean called count once, and that's going to be equals to true. And now what I'm going to do up here, after it does the calculations for the offsets, I'm going to tell it that count once equals false. And don't forget, you gotta come up here, private bool, count once, and I like to define it in here, count once equals true. And actually, I forgot one last little thing. So here, we need to make sure we say if count once, and we move all of these inside here. We move this up here actually, and it should look something like this. So how this works is once the strategy is loaded, it's going to set this boolean to true, and then once on the onbar update, it's showing as true. It's going to do all your offset calculations, and then it's going to set it to false. Once it's set to false, it's not going to redo those calculations until a new candle is formed. And then once that happens, sets it to true, and then it resets, does your calculations, and it keeps looping back and forth. This is going to save you a ton of CPU. Another important step in your strategy is to use returns. These are going to ensure you're trading the correct criteria for your strategy, and it's not just making random calculations based on other variables that you do not want. So, for example, if you only want to trade real time and you want to ignore all historical trades, because those historical trades may affect what you're trading now. You can tell the system to, hey, ignore everything historical. I'm going to run through a few examples on things I use for this specific strategy. So the first one is current bars. I want to make sure there's less than 2. Next, I want to make sure we are trading in real time. And lastly, I want to make sure there's been at least one candle since a new trading day has started. This is important in case the previous day closed under the criteria where it would create a condition where it would enter. So, for example, if the last candle of the previous day was a reversal pattern and then there was a gap up, because it meets our criteria, it would enter you on that first candle of the day. I want to prevent that. I don't want to get in a trade I wasn't intending to in the very first candle of the day. So this will prevent that from happening. We're going to set our daily profit and daily loss limits. So here I'm going to say if my realized profit is above my daily profit limit, or my realized profit is below my daily loss limit, so that's these numbers right here, then it's going to return. It's not going to continue with any of the calculations. It's not going to enter any more trades. And this will prevent farther losses or turning a good day into a bad day. You can just set your limits and that's where it's going to stop. And again, this is for realized profit, not any unrealized profit. And the last thing I want to do here is I want to make sure if it's the first bar of the session, my current count is at 0. So these are going to be the number of trades I'm allowed to take within a day. So, for example, if I don't reach my daily profit or my daily loss limit, and I only want to take, let's say, 5 trades max, this is the number that's going to be trailing up every time I take a trade. Anytime I enable the strategy, I want to make sure this number is at 0. And from here, we're going to go to on position update up here. And actually, before we do that, I want to make sure we set the variable up here, private int current count. Okay, so now we go back to the on position update. From here, we're going to do our current count. So anytime you get your position filled, it's going to make this number go up by 1. So let's type that out. So if your position quantity is the same as your position size, current count is going up by 1. And we're also going to make a print so we can keep track of this number and make sure we have the right number of trades. All right, next we're actually going to define our reversal pattern logic. So from here, we can come down here and we'll start typing. Okay, so for our bullish reversal pattern, we have the low of this candle plus the offset. So that's how much lower it needs to go from this candle, is less than or equals to the low of the previous candle. So without any offset, if it's the same price, it's still going to count as a reversal. So that's why we add the offset, and then the user can customize how much lower this candle has to be from this candle. Next, we have the close of the reversal candle is greater to or equal than the close of the previous candle. And then we have the open of the reversal candle is less than the close of the candle. So that means it opens down here, it closes up here. This is a green candle. And it's the opposite for the previous candle. So the open is greater than the close. So it's a red candle previous. So this is the logic we're using for our reversal. And once that happens, we're going to set a Boolean to true. And then if it's any other condition, we set it to false. Next, we're going to define our bearish pattern. So it's going to be pretty much the exact opposite. So here we have our high minus the offset. That is how much higher this has to go from the previous candle is greater to or equal than the previous candle. So again, if there's an offset of 0 and these two are the same height, it's still going to count it. So it's up to the user to customize how much higher this candle has to be from this candle. And then the close one, that's this candle, is less than or equals to the close of the previous candle. So this close has to be less than this close. And then the open of this candle is greater than the close of the candle. So it's a red candle. And the open of this candle is less than the close of the candle. So the previous candle in the bearish pattern is a green candle. And then if that condition is true, we set a Boolean to true. Any other condition, we set it to false. And I'm going to, guessed it, I'm going to add another region. Okay, so now it's time for the fun part. Now we're actually going to be entering an order. So first, it's going to be the criteria for a long trade. I'm going to do a region first. Again, this is not necessary. It's just for my visual. So what this means is when our reversal logic Boolean is set to true and the close price of the current candle is greater or equal than our enter long. So that's the entry area plus the offset. And our current position is flat, so there are no other open trades. And the time of the day is greater to or equal to the start time or less than or equal to the end time. And that is these times that we set out here. And in a scenario where we get stopped out, and there needs to be at least one candle since that stop out to enter again, or the same if we hit our profit target to wait one candle. And that is to help avoid entering unnecessary trades after you get stopped out if it happens to meet our criteria to enter again. Then we enter our long position once this criteria is met, and we give it a tag of my entry long. And we're going to set a Boolean here for my free trade. This is so you can move around your profit and your stop once you're in the trade already. Lastly, we're going to say if our position is long and this Boolean is true, and if we are able to set a stop loss, so if the user selected the option for the stop loss or the profit target as well, then it's going to set our stop and or our profit target. And once we set this Boolean back to false, this condition's no longer going to be true. And so we'll still have our stop and our profit, and we can move them around once that happens. And actually, let's move this up here. And now we're going to do the bearish pattern, and it's going to be pretty much the same thing, but opposite. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to copy and paste. Okay, so here you have the same condition, just with the bearish pattern. When the close is less than or equal to our short position. Same thing, it has to be flat, so no prior trades. The time of the day has to be within the start and the end. Our current count has to be less than the number of trades we defined here. And it has to be at least one candle past if we get stopped out in a short position or we reach our profit in a short position as well. And because we tagged them specifically to the short and the longs are tagged to the longs, if we get stopped out going long, we are able to enter going short in the opposite direction and vice versa. So it's only to prevent you from re-entering in the same direction. Okay, and we hit compile and we get a few errors here. And that's because we need to set the variables. So let's do that up here. We're going to name a private pool current bull ref and private pool current bear ref. And we'll also do that for the my free trade. And that should give us the compilation. Okay, so let's test this out. Oh, that went a little quick. Okay, so because we hit our profit target above 1,000, it no longer entered any more trades. So let's set this back up to 7:24 a.m. and we'll change this parameters to see if it's working a bit better. So let's actually change this to 50,000 and we'll keep this at 5. And I can already tell there's something wrong with it because it did not follow our time criteria. So we'll look into that. So we hit apply. Okay, so let's figure out the time issue. And I can already see I made a little boo-boo here. So I was telling it if it's greater than the start time or less than the end time. And it was less than the end times, so it made that condition true. Let's see if this works now. We'll compile. And now we're going to re-enable it. And it should not enter this trade actually. Okay. And now it skipped it. Let's go back and make sure if we change our time variable back to 7:24, it should enter it this time. So let's do 0. So we'll do 7:23. Hit apply, enable, and now it should enter it because it's before the time that we're working with. So here's a reversal and now it works. And we'll see if it works going the opposite way once we exit this trade. Hit our profit there. And yeah, it should enter us right there. Okay, so that works. And let's move on. Okay, so now that we know our long trades work and our short trades work, now we're going to add our break even and our trail stop logic. When working with on market data, I like to use the printed last price on level 1. So I'm going to use this code. We're going to type in our logic within there. So that way it uses the last. Okay, so first we're going to do our long break even and we'll type it out in here. So if the user selects the option for break even and our position is long and the price is greater to or equal than our break even trigger and the boolean we set to move our break even around freely, that's also true. We're going to make another variable called break even long and we're going to set this to the average price. And this is the price you get filled at. This is your break even price. So we set our stop market order, our position quantity to this average price position. And we're going to tag it with the my entry long and my stop long. And that's the same as this one up here. And then we're going to set this boolean back to false. And when that happens, you'll be able to move your stop around freely again. But now we have to define our break even trigger. And that happens in the long trade. Once you're in it, we come out here and we type out our break even trigger is equal to the average price that you got filled at plus the tick size times the trigger amount. So whatever number you pick up here. So here I have it set for 10 ticks as default. So when you hit 10 ticks from your price that you got filled at, it's going to execute this and it's going to set this order. And we also have to set this boolean for the break even trigger to true. So it's going to set this true, this true, then back to false, and then you can move your order around freely. And now for the shorts, we're going to do the exact same thing, just the opposite. And actually, I just caught a mistake. That's not short. We're working with longs. That looks a little better. So now that that's done, we're going to move to the shorts, and it's going to be the exact same thing, just the opposite. So you just do the exact same thing here. So once you're in a trade, your break even trigger is equal to the price you got filled at minus the tick size amount. It sets your break even boolean to true. Then we come down here, and if the break even is selected, your position is short, the price is less than or equal to your trigger, and this boolean is true, it's going to make this equal to the position average price. And this is your break even price. So it sets the stop market order for the quantity and to this level. And then it sets the boolean back to false. So then you can move around your stop order freely again. And we'll hit compile, but we need to set private variables. So we'll give a bunch of errors. So let's set all our private variables. So we have our break-even trigger for long and short, then my free trades, long and short, and again, a break-even long and short. And I think that should be good. Okay, let's test it out. Okay, so there's our order. And as soon as it hits 10 ticks, it moved our stop to the break-even position. So that works. And let's move on to the trail stop. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is set a trail stop. The first step is our trail stop offset. So much like the offsets we had earlier for our stop and our entry, we're going to define where each trail is going to be set at. So when we're in a long trade, we want it at the low of the previous candle. When we're in a short trade, at the high of the previous candle. The way this trail stop is going to work is just going to trail the low or the high of the previous candle. And it's just going to keep updating with each new candle until it either hits its profit or gets stopped. So we said the same thing, our percentage, our price, our tick. We find the highest of the three numbers, and then we set our trail long to the trail area, which is the low minus the offset. And then the short is the high plus the offset. And then we make a few prints here to make sure we have the correct numbers when it's actually calculating and doing its thing. So let's set that. Now you want to set when your trail stop is going to be executed. So if the user selects the trail option and the my free trail boolean is true and the position is short and the price is less than or equals to the short trigger, or the position is long and the market price is greater to or equals to the trail trigger long, then we're going to set a boolean to signify that the trail has been triggered. And this is so you can move around your trail stop, and so we can make it so it only calculates once per candle, because you don't want this to be calculating all the time because it's going to be very CPU intensive. So we only need it once, and it's just going to be on each new candle. And we'll also set this to false now. So now we have to define our triggers, and we'll set this boolean here. So for the longs, we come up here. So once you set your stop and your profit after you enter a trade, you can also define the trigger for your trail. and that's going to be your position price. This is the area you got filled, plus the tick size you selected. That's going to be this number. After 20 ticks, that's going to be your trigger to start trailing your stop. And then it's going to set this boolean to true. From here, the boolean is true. You're in a long position. The trail is triggered. So now it does its calculation, and it's going to set this to false. And this way you can move around your trade. And we're going to do the same for the short. Okay. So from here, we're going to do the long trail stop first. So once it sets your trail stop offset and your trail trigger has been activated, so from here, we use the trail trigger candle boolean to make sure this is okay. And we want to make sure the low of the most current candle is always greater than the low of the previous candle. And this is going to prevent the trail from trailing the opposite direction that you want it to. So once it hits a certain price, that's where it's going to stay. Once that's true, we enter our stop order and we give it these tags as well. And then we set our trail trigger candle to false. Now, the way we keep trailing each candle, we have to loop it back around. So in order to keep trailing each new candle, we have to make sure all of these conditions become true again. But we don't want to keep making calculations all the time. We only need them for the beginning of the candle, or else it gets really CPU intensive. So we take the my free trail and make sure we go up to is first tick of bar. And from here we can write if the position is not flat, so meaning if you are in a trade, then when it's the first tick of the bar and you are in a position, we set my free trail back to true. Then once it's set to true, these conditions become true again. It does the offset calculation. It sets your free trail to false, your trigger candle to true, and you're back trailing the new stop. And it keeps looping and looping until your position becomes flat again. From here, we say on position update, we say if your position is flat, then my free trail is equals to false. So then that will break this cycle from happening over and over. And then you reset, and then you need to get into another trade in order to set it back to true. And then lastly, the only thing left to do, we set the same thing, but for the shorts. So again, when the position is short, the trail triggered candle is true, and the high of the current candle is less than the high of the previous candle, so it keeps trailing down. It's going to set your stop order and your trail trigger candle, and it's going to keep looping until your position becomes flat, meaning no more trades. You exit it out. And let's hit compile. Line 700. Oh, I think I forgot. And region. Hit compile. And we need to set some more private variables. So we come up here. And these are the ones we set. And from here, we should hit compile, and it should work beauty. So let's test it out. So let's set the parameters so it takes a whole bunch of trades and make sure everything seems to be in order. So let's set this to 500. That should be plenty. Yeah, that should be good. Apply. Okay, once you have all your parameters set, we're gonna set the output out here just to see the calculations as they happen. Make sure you enable and clear so like it should. Play. and it's only doing one set of calculations per candle. Sets the break even, and now it's set our trail stop. It actually went down in this case. Trailing, and something is wrong. Okay, it's doing a lot of calculations like it shouldn't be. So let's figure out what's going on there. So as you may notice, the sun is out now. I was recording at 5 in the morning. Now I got some sleep and we can keep this rolling. Okay, so we have an issue where it keeps printing the same calculations over and over. So if we check our prints, you can see it's just our trail calculations. For whatever reason, it's constantly updating this. So we need to figure out why it keeps doing this when it's not supposed to. Because I only wanted to print once per candle. Because this right now is using way too much CPU and it's going to slow down your program. Okay, so let's just go through the code. So when you enter a long trade, it says it sets your free trail to true. And then if this boolean is true and either this or this is true, if you're either long and your trail trigger is reached, then it will set off your calculation for the trail stop, and then it sets it back to false, which should make it so it only prints once, and then it gets reset on the first tick of a new bar, then it gets reset to true, and then it keeps looping back and forth. So we need to figure out why this condition is not working the way it should. So we're going to be using more prints. Okay, so down here we're going to say print. So I'm trying to see what it's doing once it sets the calculation. Then we're going to copy my free trail. I want another print down here. Then we can name that after. I'm just trying to verify that this boolean is getting switched to the false position and or to the true position. Then I'm going to come back up here to the first tick of bar, and we'll name this one first tick. And we can put one up here on the on position update, and we'll name that on position. We'll compile and test it out again. Okay, now we've reset our time. Let's disable, enable, and we'll hit play. And actually, I'll put this over here so you can see it. So here we're waiting until it hits the trail stop. So now it hits our trail stop. So let's go through what's happening with the prints. Okay, so if we do a quick find, we can find the beginning of when the code starts getting executed. So we scroll down to where we made our prints and we'll go through it. So my free trail offset is true, and that is this one right here. So once it gets in the trade, this is true. We verified it is true up here. And then after the offset, it gets set to false. So that condition is okay. So then my free trail offset, for whatever reason, even though it's reading false and we verified it is false, it keeps setting all your offsets. So right now what this tells me is it's not an issue with the Boolean. The Boolean got set to false, that's acting correctly. So the problem is most likely up here somewhere. Oh, I know what I did. So pretty sure I just forgot a bracket. So for the bracket, I needed to tie them together so it's one or the other. What was happening is it was detecting whether the free trail condition and the short condition was true, or just the long trigger was true. So it was completely ignoring the my free trail. This means because this was true, it just kept doing it over and over because it didn't require this. But now, because of this bracket, we're telling it needs to be true, the Boolean, and it's either the short condition or the true condition. So now I tied these together. So now let's hit compile, and hopefully it should work. And let's bring this back to the same time and disable, enable, and hit play. Okay, so that gets set to true, then false, and it's starting to trail the stop, each one, and it's only doing the calculation once. So we'll see when it moves up. Boom, only once, and it keeps trailing it. You're not using a ton of CPU, and now we get stopped. And let's speed this up and see how it enters. So we can see anytime there's a reversal candle, if you get stopped or reach a target, it's just going to re-enter in the opposite direction. And again, guys, this is not meant to be profitable. Please don't enter this with real money. This is just to show how to build a very basic system. I guess it did make a little bit of money, but it's not really, guys. It's not sustainable. This is just to show how to build a very basic automated trader. The last thing I want to do with this before we end the video, I want to make the user customization a lot neater. This right now, it is very hard to read. If, let's say, you're sharing this with somebody else, they're going to look at this and it's going to be very confusing for somebody that's looking at this for the very first time. So we're going to go back into our code and we're going to scroll down to the properties. And we're going to change the group name and the name of it a little bit, and also the order number. And this is so we can have different sections and make it a little bit easier for the user. So, for example, for the price offset, this is for the reversal candle pattern. We're going to name this number 1 reversal candle offset. And I'm going to space this out. And I'm going to do the same for the other offsets. And you need to copy and paste the same group name so they're paired together. And I'm going to do the same for the price offset. So I'm going to name that number 2 and entry offset. Once it's in here, we can space out the name. You don't have to. I just think it looks a little bit neater. Let's space out the right letter. Tick offset. And you can change the order number. And because it's in a new group name, you can restart this at 1. Or you can start it at 0, actually. But we'll do 1. And we'll hit compile. We'll do the rest in a little bit. I just want to show you how it looks. So if you go back into your strategy, you can see now it's in a different group name. They're now in their own group. It sets them apart and it's a bit easier to read. So I'm going to be doing the same for the rest of it. I'm going to cut the video off now and then I'll show you the code after so you can see exactly how it looks like. Okay, and we are done. So this is what it looks like once you set all your properties. So we have the reversal candle offset, entry offset, stop offset. your profit targets, break even, trail stop, all your order limits. So your time, your daily profit limit, daily loss, and how many trades you can take in a day. I like to do it like this because if there's a new user that's looking at this for the very first time, they can automatically find the category that they need and they can customize the parameter they want without having to look into it too much. It's a lot easier on the eyes to separate all your parameters like this. But again, you don't have to do this. It's just for a visual effect for me. And I'll show you the code again. So we've separated it. You can do regions here as well if you want to find it easier. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. I'm trying to make this video as short as possible. And yeah, that's basically how you build a very simple automated trading system with your automatic profit stops, break even, trail stop, and other account management options in there as well. So yeah, well, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys found it useful. If you did, make sure you drop a like. And again, this is not meant to be perfect. I'm sure I'm missing something that could improve it. This is just a basic guide on how I build an automated trader. If there's anything you guys want to see for future videos, or maybe you have tips on how to improve my code, either way, I'd love to hear it. Let me know in the comments down below. But that is it for this video. Take care, guys. Enjoy.